Very good morning, my dear students. In the last class, we discussed regarding index numbers classification, majorly as unweighted and weighted index numbers. In that, we considered unweighted index numbers and studied further classification as simple aggregative and simple average of relatives, or else unweighted aggregative or unweighted average of relatives. Simple index number is nothing but unweighted index numbers. Fine. In today's class, we shall consider weighted index numbers. So in today's class, let us consider weighted price index numbers. What is the major difference between unweighted and weighted? You have already come across the definitions of unweighted as well as weighted. In unweighted, equal importance was being given to all the items under consideration. Here, in terms of weighted price index numbers, different items under the consideration will have varied or relative importance as weights. Fine. So for the construction of price index numbers, quantity weights are used, and for the construction of quantity index numbers, price weights are used. This is indicating you very clearly that concentrate on cursor properly to know clearly the aspects. For the construction of price index numbers, if you are considering price index numbers, then quantity as the weights we will be using. Quantity of either base period or current period, or base year or current year. That further decides different types of weighted price index numbers later. So you need to remember, if you are calculating price index numbers, then quantities you will be using as the weights. In case of construction of quantity index numbers, you will be using price as the weights. So like unweighted index numbers, how we had simple aggregative and simple average of relatives, in weighted index numbers also we will have weighted aggregative and weighted average of relatives as the classification what we have learnt in the previous class. So in that weighted index numbers, let me consider first classification as weighted aggregative price index numbers. Here clearly the title says it is weighted. That means weights are applied. Once when weights are applied and aggregative is used, aggregative is nothing but summation and weighted is nothing but weights are applied. Which type of index numbers these are? Price index numbers. Here it is given clearly, price index numbers, but they are weighted aggregative. Summation is also there and weights are also applied. What are the weights applied for price index numbers? They are the quantities. I mean to tell, quantities will be applied as the weights in terms of calculation of price index numbers. Fine. We have different or various kinds of weighted aggregative price index numbers. Many mathematicians and statisticians have contributed their studies in order to find out weighted aggregative price index numbers. In that, first mathematician or a statistician gave the idea of calculation of weighted aggregative price index numbers. Name was Laspere. That's why it is named after Laspere's price index number. So what it says, we shall see later, but how many such weighted aggregative price index numbers we are having, let us see first. First it is Laspere's price index number, and one more, this name you may be very much familiar being science students, Paasche. He gave another type of calculation of weighted aggregative price index numbers. That's why it is named after Paasche's price index number. So in the similar way, Marshall-Edgeworth price index number, and then Dorbish-Bowley's price index number, Fisher's price index number, and lastly Kelly's price index number or fixed weight index. These are all the types of weighted aggregative price index numbers which we have which we have in our syllabus. Fine. Try to remember these in order, students. First let it be Laspere's index number, and then Paasche's, and then Marshall-Edgeworth, and then Dorbish-Bowley's, after that Fisher's, and then Kelly's. Serially you must be in a position to tell all these weighted aggregative price index numbers. Why I am asking you to remember serially these index numbers is, it will become very easy further in order to remember formulae based on all these weighted aggregative price index numbers. Hope you are getting my point. So here, since these are price index numbers and weights applied will be quantities, first what Laspere said, let it be applied base year quantities as the weights. Laspere proposed base year quantities to be applied as the weights in order to calculate weighted aggregative price index numbers. What Paasche suggested later, instead of base year quantities, we can apply current year quantities, he suggested. Then later, Marshall-Edgeworth, what they suggested is, we can include arithmetic mean of both base year quantities and the current year quantities. That is nothing but, in Laspere's price index number, Q0 will be applied weight because base year quantity, which will be written in terms of notation as Q0. And Paasche's price index number, weights applied will be current year quantities, I said. So it will be Q1. Then Marshall-Edgeworth price index numbers, it is arithmetic mean of both base year quantities as well as current year quantities. Arithmetic mean of those two means Q0 plus Q1 divided by 2. Then Dorbish-Bowley, what they suggested is, already calculated Laspere's and Paasche's price index numbers will be there with us. We can take the average of these two. That means An index number calculated using last year's price index number plus purchase price index number divided by 2. Arithmetic mean of these two, last year's and purchase index number, is suggested by Darvish-Bowley's price index number. And then Fisher's price index number. Fisher suggested instead of having arithmetic mean of last year's and purchase, we can consider geometric mean of these two, because we will be dealing in terms of calculation of index numbers as rates and ratios, because price relative or quantity relative or value relative, in that way relatives we will be writing, those are nothing but ratios, and it is being multiplied by 100 always, calculation of index number. That's why it will be considered as rates also. That means once when they are being dealt with rates and ratios, Fisher thought it is better to take geometric mean of last year's and purchase. From the last year, I mean first year PUC syllabus, we know already when geometric mean will be used. Geometric mean is very much ideal for rates and ratios. That's why Fisher suggested, the geometric mean of last year's and purchase to be considered. And then Kelly's price index number or fixed weight method or fixed weight index number method is, we need not go for any base year or current year quantities at all. We shall not consider neither base year quantities nor current year quantities as the weights, but we shall have quantity as Q to be considered as weight. Neither Q not to be considered as weight nor Q1 to be considered as weight, but one fixed weight which will be Q to be considered for calculation of price index number. Kelly suggested, that's why Kelly's price index number is being told as fixed weight index number. So once again I am suggesting you students, remember all these, from last year till Kelly's price index number, remember in serial. Once again I am asking you to recall what is the weight applied in order to calculate last year's price index number. Once when all these are price index numbers, one thing is very much sure, that quantities are being applied as weights. Once when you consider last year's price index number, what is the weight applied? It is base year quantities, which is nothing but Q naught. Then purchase price index number, weight applied is current year quantities, which is nothing but Q1. And then Marshall-Edgeworth price index number, arithmetic mean of Q0 and Q1 is applied as the weight. That means Q0 plus Q1 divided by 2 will be the weight applied in terms of Marshall-Edgeworth price index number. Here weights applied is over last year's and purchase and Marshall-Edgeworth. I mean to tell, for last year's Q0 is the weight, for purchase Q1 is the weight, for Marshall-Edgeworth Q0 plus Q1 divided by 2 is the weight applied. And then Darvish-Bowley is, for your simple way of remembering, I am telling you, for Darvish-Bowley's arithmetic mean of first two, last year's and purchase, and then Fisher's is geometric mean of first two, last year's and last year's and purchase. And then Kelly's price index number is nothing but fixed weight index number. So whatever I have explained so far from this particular slide, let us see in detail once again. So last year's price index number, first one is, you should be in a position now to recall all those last year's to Kelly's index number serially before it appears on the screen. First it is last year's price index number, and we know here base year quantities or Q naughts are the weights applied or used as weight. Then the formula will be like this. P01 notation we already know, only this P and this 01. What is that? Price index number in current year 1 as compared to base year 0, correct? Since these are, or this is last year's index number, that's why here we are writing it to be L. P01 is price index number in current year as compared to base year. This L represents, look at the cursor, this L represents, it is last year's price index number. Here, since these are aggregative, this summation is present, both numerator and denominator. And then these are weighted index numbers, that is this Q0 and Q0 is the weight applied. You can observe base year quantities as Q0 will be weight applied. Look at the cursor. This Q0 in numerator and this Q0 in denominator, these are the weights applied. Since these are price index numbers, that's why this P1 by P0 as a price relative, it is being written. Look at the cursor properly. This is P1 by P0 as a price relative, that indication, and Q0 and Q0 is weights applied. So later it has to be multiplied by 100 as these are index numbers, and index numbers are multiplied by 100 always. They are expressed in terms of percentages. All index numbers are expressed in terms of percentages. That's why it has to be multiplied by 100. So remember the formula, how to write. Don't read it to be sum of P1 Q0 divided by sum of P0 Q0 multiplied by 100. Don't remember in that way, because many more formulas will be there to remember. You may get confused. Concept wise, try to remember. Last year's price index number means quantities of base year, that is Q0 is applied as a weight. That much you should remember. Then the sum of P1 divided by the sum of P0 has to be written first. P1 by P0 in this format. Then Q0 will be applied as the weight. Q0 and Q0 multiplied by 100. This way the formula has to be remembered. Then purchase price index number. Second one. What is the weight applied here? Try to recall. It is nothing but current year quantities. So current year quantities or Q1 are the weights used or weights applied. So what will be the formula here? You can relate to this last year's index number. Look at the cursor. You can relate to this last year's index number and try to write purchase price index number. So here sum of P1 and sum of P0, this much. Look at the cursor properly. Sum of P1 divided by sum of P0. This much will be as usual. Instead of this Q0 and Q0, we will be writing Q1 and Q1 as the weight applied. And then later we will have the formula like this. P01 is commonly used notation to write price index number, and this P indicates it is purchase index number. Then sum of P1, this sum of P0, this much, look at the cursor, this much, it is as usual format, and this Q1 and Q1 is the weight applied. and as usual it is being multiplied by 100 in order to keep it to be like expressed as percentage. So here in this slide we have understood last year's price index number, how it is to be written, and past year's price index number, how it is to be written. Next in cereal, which one comes? You can recall and tell me. Which one comes next as a cereal? It comes Marshall Edgeworth, and then Dorbish Bowley, and after that Fisher's, and then last Kelly's index number. So all those index numbers, how we can write, we shall see in the next video.